Good morning, Journey Church. What's going on? It's Chuck Van Hook here with you. Man, we are missing your beautiful faces on Sunday mornings, but we are thrilled that you have joined us in our virtual world this morning. Hey, if you are joining us on Facebook, here's what we need you to do. We need you to leave us a comment below. Favorite emoji, number of people that are watching with you, last 4 digits of your social security number, whatever you're comfortable with. Drop that in the comments below. We would love to see who's hanging out with us this morning. Hey, over the next few minutes, we've got some encouraging and some challenging stuff coming your way, as well as some resources and some ideas for you and your family as we wrap things up to help get us through these challenging times. And hey, speaking of challenging times, we've got prayer requests. I know we've all got things going on. If there's anything that we can be praying for you and your family about, please let us know. If you're on Facebook, you can send us a message through the Messenger app. Or if you would like to send us an email, you can email us at prayer@ourjourney.com. Our team gets together on Tuesday morning, and we love to be praying for you and your family and partnering with you guys. Speaking of partnering, you guys are killing it with your giving. We are so appreciative. It is much needed, and we are thankful that you guys have decided to partner with Journey Church and what God is doing through Journey Church and our community. If you would like to text to give, you can text to give at 731-506-1010. 731-506-1010. You can text there. Or if you would like to give online, you can go to ourjourney.com and click on the give button, and you can give on there as well. Man, we cannot wait to get back together in one place with you. But for now, let's get things rolling.
Psalm 34. I will praise the Lord at all times. I will constantly speak his praises. I will boast only in the Lord. Let all who are helpless take heart. Come, let us tell of all the Lord's greatness. Let us exalt his name together. I prayed to the Lord and he answered me. He freed me from all my fears. Those who look to him for help will be radiant with joy.
No shadow of shame will darken their faces. In my desperation, I prayed and the Lord listened. He saved me from all my troubles. For the angel of the Lord is a guard. He surrounds and defends all who fear him. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Oh, the joys of those who take refuge in him.
Fear the Lord, you godly people, for those who fear him will have all they need. Even strong young lions sometimes go hungry, but those who trust in the Lord will lack no good thing. Come, my children, and listen to me, and I will teach you to fear the Lord. Does anyone want to live a life that is long and prosperous? Keep your tongue from speaking evil and your lips from telling lies. Turn away from evil and do good. Search for peace and work to maintain it.
The eyes of the Lord watch over those who do right. His ears are open to the cries for help. But the Lord turns his face against those who do evil. He will erase their memory from the earth.
The righteous person faces many troubles, but the Lord comes to the rescue each time. For the Lord protects the bones of the righteous. Not one of them is broken.
The Lord hears his people when they call to him for help. He rescues them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed.
Peace, bring it all to peace. The storm surrounding me, let it break. At your name still, call the sea to still. This rage in me to still every wave. At your name, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus.
Hi, my name is Jeremy, and I'm a technology junkie. You know, like way back when, I had the very first MP3 players because they were awesome, but they were like the size of a brick. It was huge. Before that, I had a beeper. Remember beepers? I've had beepers because it had a button on it. I have an electronic toothbrush because it has a button. Was driving a Prius. I'm 6 feet tall, I weighed 240 pounds, I have this beard, and I drove a Prius because it was techie, right? It had buttons and it did stuff, and I loved it, to be honest with you. I love buttons because buttons do things. When you push them, something happens. When I push the button on the remote, the TV comes on. When I push the volume button up, the music gets louder. When you're in my van and you push the heated seat button, my butt gets warm. I mean, buttons do things, and that makes me happy. Now, here's the thing that I've been figuring out. Over the last couple weeks, I've had these conversations with people, and as I'm talking to them, I'm saying, "Hey, how are you holding up during, all of this?" And usually people will, kind of name some of the emotions that they're feeling. They'll say things like, I'm just a little anxious, or I'm a little afraid, or I'm sad, or I'm angry, or I'm frustrated, or I'm tired, or I'm bored. In fact, would you do this? I mean, and listen, all of you need to do this. What I want you to do is I want you to get your commenting fingers ready and click in the comment field down there. And I want you just to comment one word that basically describes the number one emotion that you felt, right? Seriously, click in it. I see you in your boxers right there. Yes, I see you. You click on the comment button and type in, what's the one emotion that you feel right now? Everybody do it. It's only fun if we all play. So my word is I'm anxious, right? I'm just anxious about it. I'm anxious to get past it. I'm anxious about how this is gonna play out. I'm anxious about all the stuff that's going around. I'm not necessarily worried, but I am anxious. That's my word. What's your word? So put your word right down there. Now, here's the thing I'm learning as I've talked with people is that as we're experiencing the result, we have to ask ourselves, what was the button? If buttons do things, you push a button and something happens. If we see that something happening, then we can back it up and ask ourselves, what's the button that's being pushed? You see, every one of us, we have some things that we depend on every single day for normality, sanity, peace of mind. Like for some of us, it's the rhythm. It's the everyday schedule, it's the dependability, the structure that has life. I get up at this time, I go to work at this time, I come home, I do these things. For others of us, people like me, it's the freedom. It's that I can do whatever I want to do, whenever I want to do it. But the truth is that every single one of us have had that kind of normality and that kind of rhythm or that kind of freedom interrupted. We can't do what we want to do. Nobody's has the same schedule they had 2 weeks ago. Everything's different, and guess what it does? It pushes a button in us. In fact, if you look down below in those comments, or that emotion that you've been feeling, or that anxiousness that I feel, what's happened is the interruption of normality's pushed a button, and it's caused that kind of issue in our life. So here's the thing, man, we're going to talk about today is a big deal to us. We're going to talk about our own emotional responses. How do we go the distance in our separated way? But how do we do that and go the distance emotionally? So what we're talking about over the next little bit will be exactly that. And I hope you'll stick around for every single second of it, because we're going to talk about how to go the distance emotionally. But we don't have to do it separately. We can do it together.
So regardless what your normal reaction is, there is something that's predictable. There's 3 of those we want to look at to start off today. When people have their norm turned upside down. First is fight, the second one is flight, and the third one we call freeze. Let's start with the first one, fight. If your personality when the button is pushed starts to fight, those are people who tend to charge, move forward. They go toward the sound of gunfire sometimes. There's this huge need for those of us in that category to want to control something or to control someone. It's just part of the DNA of who we are. Here's some words that I jotted down that would describe somebody like that: frustrated or angry, controlling, cynical, distrusting, always needs to feel like they're right. Now, fight is the first one. The second one is flight, and it's almost completely opposite of that. For somebody that deals with flight when all of their chaotic world comes at them, they often want to disengage. They want to pull away. They want to separate. Often they'll become people who are like Elvis has now left the building. Mostly what those people would want would be to not feel what they're feeling, because what they're feeling they hate to feel, and so they'll do almost anything to change it. Sometimes those of us in this category will binge eat, or will watch 2,000 hours of Netflix, or will get completely lost in our social media world, or whatever it takes to detach from what we're feeling currently. Here's some words that I jotted down that would describe that: detached, distracted, disinterested, or checked out. The third word is word freeze, and it's a little bit different. Freeze is exactly what it sounds like. When we just don't know what to do, we just stop. It's a little bit of a deer in the headlights. It is that feeling of, because I don't know what to do, I don't want to do anything. Often people in this world will find themselves locked up and not sure. Here's some words that would describe. They may feel overwhelmed, or anxious, or fearful, or stuck, or shut down. Sometimes we get micro-focused. The crazy thing is, none of these reactions are good. None of them are bad. They're just reactions. To be honest, most of the time it happens in us before we even realize what's going on. It's kind of intuitive. Some of them are really helpful. It's how we survive. If you don't have any of those instincts, it's why someone would walk off a ledge and fall to their death, or it keeps us sometimes from touching something that's hot and getting burned. They're really good things as long as they're in a healthy amount. The problem is often those things move to an unhealthy side, and that's when emotionally we get really dysfunctional. We become emotionally distanced, and that's kind of what we want to talk about. Simply put, emotional distancing is when we actually get so dysfunctional with our emotions that it begins to affect everything else in our life. And it happens to people. You know what kind of people? Breathing, alive people. It's just how we deal with life. So today we want to kind of dig into that. So maybe a good place for us to start is to dig into a verse. I think it's one of the most familiar verses that you find in the whole Bible. Look at it with me. It says this in Philippians 4:13. It says, "I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength." The verse is this beautiful promise, and it is often used or associated with somebody who's like trying to beat cancer, or like overcome some great obstacle, somebody who's trying to get a job promotion or raise their family or whatever it might be. And while I think it may apply in those settings, it's not the context from which Paul wrote it. Actually, the subject that was on his mind was one word, and it's a word different than any of the ones we mentioned on our list before. Maybe it's different than any of the ones that were put in the comment section. It's actually the word contentment. Matter of fact, let's back up 2 verses ahead of that and read what he said. I'll read it from the Message, and starting in verse 11, it says, "I have learned by now to be quite content whatever my circumstances." I think one of the important things to notice is that he said, "I've learned," and the reason he said that is because he learned it. He wasn't born with it. It did not come naturally. He didn't stumble across it. He literally learned. He said, "I've learned to be content whatever my circumstances. I'm just as happy with little as with much as with little. I found the recipe for being happy, whether full or hungry, hands full or hands empty, whatever I have, wherever I am." And then he gets to this verse, "I can make it through anything in the one who makes me who I am." The crazy thing about it is, I think there are things we all want or wish for or wish we could control that are outside of our control. And when it happens, it makes all of us respond and react, but it also points out when that happens that there's something that might be missing in our life. And what Paul says that something is this little thing called contentment. I think contentment's something we all long for, but it's hard to know where to find it. Sometimes a lack of contentment can be the reason that we have such a hard time sitting still. We have a hard time focusing. We have a hard time not living on our phone or with constant interruption. It's why we can't stay focused on the person sitting right in front of us sometimes. It's because we have a discontented or an unsettled soul, an unsettled heart. You ever deal with that? For me, that is a real struggle, is that sometimes I'm so anxious to find what's next that I can't be happy where I am, and that's all a little piece of contentment. My wife read me this the other day, and I thought it was so interesting. It's kind of stuck in my mind. She said this statement: one of the reasons so many of us can't fall asleep at night is because when we close our eyes, we are left alone with our own thoughts. For so many of us, it is the first time that's happened all day long. The truth is, all of the crazy, all of the pressure, all of the unmet expectations land on us. Sometimes when we turn the lights off and turn the noise off, we're left alone with our own thoughts, and it scares us to death. A distracted life can be overwhelmingly frightening when you take away the distractions. You ever have that? Sometimes I can finish a day and be exhausted, and when I turn all the lights off or when I close my eyes, I'm left alone with my own thoughts, and it's the scariest thing of all because I don't know what to do with all of those things. Contentment is one of the things that we talk about, but it's not a something that can be found. It's not a thing that we hone. It's not a ditch that we kind of fall into. It's a very complicated thing. Really, it's not as much about a thing as it is a person. I love the way that Paul said it. He said, I can do anything in the one who gives me life. It's more attached to a person than it is a thing. I want to slow down for just a second, and I want to read you a few statements. When you hear them, the first inclination for me is to say, you know who that really applies to. I want to just encourage you, maybe let these try to apply to you. I'll read them. They're all kind of on the negative side, and then I want to offer some hope that we can finish things up with. Here's the first one. You can't be content and be controlling. You cannot be content and be prideful or arrogant. You can't be content and always require an answer or understanding everything that's going on. You cannot be content and constantly be critical of others. You can't be content if you can't be still. You may say, what does stillness have to do with contentment? But I think we'll begin to understand why it is so important that those things aren't in our life if we want to choose to be content. I could tell you what my opinion is, but honestly, I don't know that my opinion's worth any more than anyone else's. But I know a guy whose opinion carries a lot of weight. We can read about it in Matthew chapter 11. This is what Jesus said in this really weird passage where he mixes these statements that don't seem to go together. To me, they're a little bit like saying something that makes no sense, like delicious and cauliflower. Now, some of you know what I mean by that. Those words were never meant to be put together, but for some reason we do it. Let me show you his version of that. He says these words. Then Jesus said, come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I'll give you rest. Now, how could you not like that? That's delicious. That's what everybody dreams of. The man who created the universe saying, come to me, because what I want to do, my goal for you is to give you rest. Could you use any of that right now? Someone who would lift the burden and give you rest. But then he mixes it with this cauliflower statement. He says, take my yoke upon you. What does a yoke have to do with it? We're either talking about eggs or we're talking about attaching two animals together, but what does that have to do with rest? They don't go together. And then he makes a third statement that doesn't seem to have anything to do with either one. He said, let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls, because my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. Well, I don't know if you've been around Christianity very much, but if you have, easy and light don't seem to follow suit. As a matter of fact, the same guy told us in the same Bible that in this life we will have trouble. That doesn't match up with easy and light. So what it tells me is that Jesus has something for us that is in spite of the fact that life is difficult. In spite of the fact that life brings its own troubles, that we can live a life at a different pace, at a different rhythm, that we can actually enjoy contentment in the middle of the craziness of life. And I think that's what he wants to teach us. A writer, Frederick Bruner, made this statement. He said, a yoke is a work instrument. Thus, when Jesus offers us a yoke, he offers us what we might think tired workers would need least. They need a mattress or a vacation, not a yoke. But Jesus realizes that the most restful gift he can give the tired is a new way to carry life, a fresh way to bear responsibilities. What I wanted was an escape, and what he gave me was equipment. But the truth is, the equipment that he gave me is the very thing I need. I think it also very interesting that what he said is, come to me and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. And literally what he was saying is, if you'll connect yourself to me, not just believe what I teach, not just do the things that I say, but he wants us to walk through life connected with him. Because he said then, because I am gentle or humble. Those are not descriptions we often think of when we're thinking about doing work. But that is his approach. And he said, when you're with me, that will rub off on you. And the truth is, a gentle person or a humbleness of heart is something that goes with contentment. As a matter of fact, I'll just say this, you will not find contentment if you don't find those resources coming from within you. As a matter of fact, we were told later on that the fruit of God's Spirit living in us was actually a list of things that kind of match up with that. It said it would be love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and self-control. You may say, well, that's just not my personality. But can I tell you this? It's not a personality that we're born with. That is the reaction. That is the outcome when we walk connected with Jesus. Our contentment doesn't come from a habit. It comes from a person, and that person is Jesus. And if we want to live a life of contentment in a non-contented world, it will require us linking up with him. Well, as a good way to finish today, I want to give you a couple of things we could do, and they're really in the same vein. Matter of fact, they both stem off the word encourage. The first one of those is you have to encourage you. I want to encourage you every day, maybe, that this would be a help for you. One of my favorite things I've ever read or heard is a statement by a guy by the name of Reinhold Niebuhr. He made this statement, and it's been kind of twisted over time a little bit or formatted differently. It's often associated with recovery. And by the way, being contented in a broken world requires recovering. And so this is what it says. Maybe it's familiar to you. It says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And that's most things. The courage to change the things I can. And the wisdom to know the difference. God, give me these three things. It says, give me serenity. Maybe another word for that would be peace. Maybe a good word for that would be contentment. God, give me the contentment to change, to accept the things I cannot change, because that's most things in life, to change, the courage to change the ones I can, and that usually has to do with me that needs change. And mostly the wisdom to know the difference between the two. So the first thing is, I wonder if you just start each day before you hit the ground, before you check the news, before you look at your social media, before you deal with your family, before you deal with life's challenges. Before you face off with life, face off with God. And maybe that's a prayer. God, give me courage and wisdom and the things that I need. Mostly give me contentment. If you ask for it, you may find it's far more available. The last thing then is not just encourage yourself, but encourage someone else. There's this beautiful thing about encouraging people. If you're not sure where to start with that, S. Truett Cathy, the guy who founded Chick-fil-A, the inventor of Christian chicken not on Sundays, he made this statement, if they are breathing, they need encouraging. And isn't that true? If you're not sure who to encourage, just check and see if they're breathing. If they are, go ahead. You don't have to overthink this one. The amazing thing about encouragement is it's almost impossible to encourage well if you're self-absorbed. So for me, when I notice I'm not encouraging people much, I usually assume I'm lost in my own head. I'm not in a healthy place. The other part is, it's almost impossible to encourage someone else and it not help you. Because as you pour into someone else, God has promised He would pour back into you. As you make room for Him, He comes along and He encourages you. And so it's a great way to live. The end of the statement that talked about serenity, we have the little phrases we read that a lot of people know. This is actually the finish to the statement that's often forgotten. Maybe it'll be just what you need today. I don't know where you stand in the world of contentment, but maybe these words will be true of you, and if they are, it'll promise you a life that you could only dream of. This is what it says. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, and trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next.
Wow, that's a powerful idea. The idea that you could be reasonably happy in this life and have faith to be supremely happy in the life to come. That is really what this whole journey is all about. I'm glad you took some time to hang out with us and be a part of this online gathering. It's not as good as face-to-face, but it's what we've got, and we'll continue to do everything that we can to help people take their next step toward Jesus. In fact, speaking of next steps, let me just mention a few things you can really do to help us help people take those next steps. One of them is giving. Right now, more than ever, probably, your giving, your generosity is supremely important. It's super critical for us. And so if you would go to ourjourney.com and click on the Give Online button, or you can text message a gift to 731-506-1010. It's really easy to set up. It won't be any problem at all, even if you've never given before. It doesn't go on your phone bill. It goes on a card that you put together on that form. So that's one way you can do that. Another way you can do and stay connected is to follow the pages that we have at Journey. The first one's our 412 page. 412 students is for kids between 6th and 12th grade and their parents and keeping them engaged. And so if you'll search Facebook for 412 students, you'll be able to find lots of information, stuff they're doing it's a lot of fun to just stay connected with each other. So make sure you do that. If you've got little ones at home, the Journey Kids page is helpful to you. There's challenges every single day, stuff going on, so people are kind of liking, commenting, and posting pictures and all those kinds of things, just kind of staying together as a community. You know, a lot of times in our world, the idea of liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing, those are all about popularity. Today, right now especially, this whole idea of sharing things and staying engaged, those are things that help us stay connected and help us help people take their next step toward Jesus. So please like, share, engage, post comments, pictures, engage more. The more you engage, the more you'll help people engage. And that's what helping people take their next step toward Jesus looks like right now in this world. And I'm really thankful that you've been a part of today. And I hope that not only will you stay healthy, but that you'll stay engaged and that you'll continue to be influential in the world you live in and help people take their next step toward Jesus.